Okay, I'm just going to say we're done. Does anyone else have any announcements? I won't hog all of them. Aaron? Yeah, Mike's coming to you.
Is that okay? Yes? I shall keep this as relatively brief as I can. This is the first announcement I've ever made that doesn't intend to have any jokes in it, so I'm a bit out of my comfort zone. It will still probably be funnier than anything else I've ever managed, but there you go. So just briefly, this was not the announcement I had planned for this evening. Having spent many weeks and months ensuring that the game of Warwick SU Motion fulfilled every requirement asked of us by the union's existing laws, and answering those challenges set by the initial composite meeting of Term 1, Carl and I were prepared to mount our steeds and ride into battle. Instead, we find ourselves at the wedding without a bride. Well, without giving spoilers away, a bride that has been stabbed squarely in the front. The motion was the child of a love of Game of Thrones partnered with the joint, perhaps contradictory desire to both galvanise student involvement and to do so in a way that was fun and appealing to those who most readily shun union politics. Instead, the progression, and at this time termination, of this motion has been neither fun nor democratic. I would announce our bemusement at the decision made by the trustees and responsible sabbatical officers, but bemusement, by its nature, suggests an element of surprise, and nothing those involved have done has surprised us. At the initial composite meeting, Carl and I were rounded upon by the president and the DDO, being told by the latter that once he had finished his comments, he was not interested in hearing our opposition or responses. Like John Aaron, our wine had been poisoned and we were fated to drink it. Beyond this, like many post-pot mornings, our progression was halted by phantom receipts. We were told repeatedly that there were legal costs totaling hundreds of pounds relating to the copyright costs involved. We are yet to see those receipts. Indeed, if those receipts do exist, which I highly doubt that they do, may I advise the union finds itself new lawyers. Carl and I were able to clear up all the legal concerns for free, and with legal training that goes no further than watching Judge Judy. This level of complete lack of transparency has embodied this whole procedure. Carl informs me, since I was off on a spy conference in Venice, just wanted to drop that in, it was lovely, that those in previous vocal opposition had dramatically softened their tone, and it is now abundantly clear that this was for one reason. The decision to throw it out had already been made. It took only 20 minutes after the motion passed composite 3 votes to 1 for the trustees to throw it out. For those of you here who hope to use this motion and our clear upset and disappointment as a rally against the union on all fronts and to condemn it or outright, forget it. Carl and I passionately believe in the need for a union and for that union to represent and help its students. What we do not support, however, are sabbatical officers and trustees who encourage participation only on their terms. We do not support riding roughshod over the rules that were first used to stop the motion at composite and then ignored upon its progression. We do not support the claims of costs and reputation to intimidate students. We are appealing the decision made by an unelected, unaccountable body against the wishes of a cross-section of students that included many societies, sports teams, year groups, and subjects. I know we will fail. I just hope that this motion, conceived as a drunken form of sad procrastination, goes some way to answering the question of our SABs and trustees. If you're not here to represent us, what is the point of you? Thank you.
Any other announcements? And
Hello. Okay, that's good. So we have got our One World Week coordinator positions we're advertising for at the moment. We've got 4 coordinator positions, 1 for each element of the festival, for days, nights, sports, forum and conference. That was forum and conference, the last one. And the application details are on a news story on the SU website. So if you're interested in running the largest kind of student festival that we hold on campus, then the deadline is Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. And information is on the news story of the SU website. Thank you.
Lucy?
Cool. Those of you at council will have already heard this notification. Anyone in their final year of undergraduate study, there has been a new raft of scholarships announced by the university totalling about £600,000. I've written a blog about it because that's all I know how to do. There's also a news story on the SU website, and it's on Insight. If you basically qualify for a range of options, you get fees paid and a £4,000 bursary. So please do take a look and see if you qualify. Cool, thanks.
Miguel?
Hi everyone, just to give a quick announcement, quick shout about the Alternative University Council. It's happening this Wednesday after the actual University Council. The actual University Council finishes at 2. The Alternative University Council finishes at 2:30. Now why have Protect Public University called for this alternative meeting of the University Councils? For a simple reason. The University Council has 26 members, only 2 of which are students. The only members of this council which are democratically elected are those 2 students. Of the 26 members, only 6 are women. And none, I repeat, none, are minority ethnicities. We believe that the University Council has no diversity and no democratic accountability. And that is why we have invited everyone, I say again, everyone, to attend this Alternative University Council, because we believe in opening up the debate so that everyone can speak their minds about Warwick and make this university and this union a better place. We count on each and every one of you to be there and help build a better Warwick for you and me. Thank you.
Cheers, Miguel. Any other announcements? Yes, Kat.
There's a gum clinic tomorrow in MR45. Starts at 11, ends at 5. Please do all come.
Okay. We done. I didn't see any other hands go up. If not, we'll move on to questions to officers. Okay. John LePage first. John LePage has pre-submitted some questions, but we'll give you the opportunity to voice them.
I won't bother reading them out in full because I think because I sent them to Cosmo and I think he's going to answer them all and hopefully like repeat my questions if that's possible. But I submitted 5 questions about what Aaron was talking about the decision for the trustees to overrule decision of composite, and there was a few things which I generally was unclear of, and I think that it'd be really good if we could clear them up.
Cool, okay, yeah, so I'll read out the questions as well. So the first question is it normal procedure for the trustees to consider motions going to ASM, or is it normal procedure for trustees to consider ratification of decisions after an ASM? If it is normal procedure, then is the trustees' code of conduct being broken? The code of conduct being quoted, I will act within the governing documents of Warwick Students' Union and the law and abide by the policies and procedures of the organisation. It is within the trustees' remit to withdraw a motion from composite through motion impact assessment procedure. In that instance, the trustee or the motion impact assessment group have delegated authority from the trustees, and that's why it was withdrawn. As much as Aaron's, I completely hear what you're saying, we were within the procedures, so I don't know what point you're trying to make there. Oh yeah, sorry, next question. Was the decision of the trustees made in a scheduled Board of Trustees meeting, or was an exceptional meeting or email vote called? If this is not normal procedure following a meeting of composite, then who called for a vote on this matter and why? Ben, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, on this one, so no, the decision was taken by the Motion Impact Assessment Group, which has devolved responsibility on behalf of the Trustee Board in accordance with Bylaw 8 as voted on by students. This group has already been given a steer by the Board of Trustees as to what to do with this motion.
Okay, yep. The next question Ben's going to take as well, which is the Members in Arts 62.3 requires that non-confidential minutes of the Board of Trustees shall be available to the members of the union's website. Why have no minutes been uploaded this calendar year?
Okay, so the February meetings minutes were approved last week at the Board of Trustees. Every time you have a meeting, those minutes will then get typed up and they will go to the next trustee meeting for the members to approve that the minutes are an accurate reflection. That has just happened for the February meeting at the April meeting. So those minutes will go up online, imminently, and then the April ones will go up after the next trustee meeting.
Okay, and then the next question is, why has no public statement been issued up until now regarding the decision to overrule a democratically elected body and thus reject a petition signed by our members in line with the trustees' code of conduct requirements to uphold union principles of transparency and to specifically never use confidentiality as an excuse not to disclose matters that should be transparent and open? So obviously you're talking about Aaron's motion. We didn't have any intention to release like a full-on public statement, but it's on the ASM webpage, the full motion and the motion impact that says exactly why it was withdrawn. Okay, and the final question is, why was the decision made at all, given the code of conduct requirement to uphold the democratic principles of Warwick SU and ensure that I understand the interactions between the voice of the student body and the governance of the students' union? At the end of the day, the trustees felt that this wasn't in the best interest of the union. They'd already made this decision at a previous trustee meeting, as long as the motion hadn't changed in a significant way, which it hadn't, and that's completely within their power to withdraw the motion. That's all the questions from John.
Great, okay. I'll move on to other pre-submitted questions. This again is to you, Cosmo. What observable differences to the lives of students have resulted from the first two all-student meetings? Okay, so I'll run you through some of the things that happened in the first two all-student meetings. So, for example, the No More Page 3 campaign was passed. We've since met with the university at least a number of times to discuss this. As far as I'm aware, Kat and Ben have been leading on that one. So if you want to ask more about that, you can ask them. The Two Ticks campaign, Kat, I know, is meeting next week at this Friday at an Equality and Diversity Committee to bring this up. The fossil-free motion was also passed, and we've since met with the university finance manager to go through this, and hopefully some progress is being made, and it's kind of like a watch this space kind of thing. So those are some noticeable differences that I picked up. Ben Sundell, do you believe that a charity with its trustee system is the appropriate framework for running a students' union that is independent?
Yeah, absolutely. So the trustees are obviously our highest form of governance. They're there to ensure that we act in the best interests of students at all time, in the interest of the entire student body. They're there to make sure that our finances are good, that that we're legally sound, that this students' union is always acting in the best way for a strategic impact and enhancing students' education. We have some great lay members who bring some invaluable experience. We have student members who bring some incredible experience of life here at Warwick, and we have sabbatical officers who are elected. I think it's really important to have the trustee system, So, yeah, no, I do.
Stay on your feet. To you again, Ben. What do trustees do, and why don't anyone know who they are?
Okay, so a list is on the union website of all the trustees, and it breaks down specifically with the lay trustee members, kind of their past experience, and why we thought they'd be really good, to be a part of what we're doing here. There's also a list down of the separate committees that come out of the Board of Trustees, and if anyone's interested, I'm happy to tell you which specific trustees sit on those subcommittees. It's just a breakdown. There are three main subcommittees of the trustees, and certain trustees sit on each of them. I dispute that point. I think all that information is there.
Okay, this is to all sabbatical officers. There's no need to give a laborious response, but in your officer training, you were told that you wear 3 hats as part of your job: membership, charity, and business. Which hat is the most important to you? We'll start off with Cosmo.
Probably charity, because even though we are a business in a way, the surplus we make goes straight back into our members. Miguel, why are you shouting shame? That's pathetic. Kat, you're next. Or Ben, go for it.
I guess my job centres around helping students, so I guess the membership, because I have direct contact with them every day.
point is that we have 3 hats because they're all necessary to run the Students' Union. We can't lose sight of the fact that we're a charity. We can't lose sight that we do everything for our members. We can't do things for our members without having a business hat on and making sure that we're financially soluble. Like, you can't split them. Obviously, everything we do is driven by membership, but you can't forget the other 2 because it wouldn't make things possible.
Lucy's put that point very well. There's, the amount. You can't reduce these points to, separately. Do you know what? I get up every single morning and I want to fight for the best interests of students. Do you know what? Sometimes it's not as easy as just saying that we can do something, because it's passed, by an all-student meeting, or just because someone's asked us to do it. It doesn't mean that we can do it straight away. We have structures. There are things that we have to do. There are laws. We have to make sure that the SU is run in a way that's going to be financially sustainable. The amount of things I've heard this year that we should be doing about cutting prices, about people want us to do something over here, people want us to do something over there. There's so many things. If we want to pay the living wage, if we want to have cheaper prices, there are so many things which we would love to do. We cannot do everything all at once. What we want to do is to support our members. We are here to make sure that our members have a fantastic experience at Warwick. We're here to represent our members with the university. We're here to stand up for you wherever that means. I stand in local community forums and I fight for you. I stand at landlords forums and I fight for you. I win things behind the scenes at university meetings every single day. We've made so much progress on recorded lectures. We have launched the Love Community campaign and we are impacting people off campus. Rate your landlord. We are beginning to hold landlords accountable. There is so much that we do which people do not see, and I'm fed up of the amount of stick that we get for people who just can't even be bothered to ask. There's so much stuff that I'm not here for a laugh. I've loved the Students' Union my entire time at Warwick, and all I've wanted to do is give something back to it. Sometimes you don't get to make the easiest decisions in the world, but I know that at the end of my 2 years, me and the whole of my team and the whole of my team last year have done their job for students at Warwick.
Before you answer, Anne, I just want to say, Miguel, I heard you might have said shame there. That's not the kind of language I want. You didn't. Okay, good. That's not the kind of language we want in student council. Thank you, Anne.
Cool. Yeah, same as Lucy. We wear different hats at different times, and I'm proud to be part of the sub-team that's done that this year. I think we've played it really well. So.
I completely agree with everything that Ben said. I agree totally that all 3 hats are important, and we have to balance those and do the best we can.
I'm going to follow what Ben said with A, an agreement, and B, actually saying it's quite upsetting when people ask questions like this that reduce our role to a very minuscule part of it. I spend an awful lot of my time trying to do with very, very complex negotiations with the university about multiple things. Kat, Lucy and I spent an awful lot of time talking about potential, massive changes to teaching and learning in this university, and having somebody ask, do you think you consider yourself a business, a charity, or a membership, and saying, which one do you pick? It's all the same. It's all together. So I agree with everything that the other subs have said. I particularly agree with what Ben has said. And to be honest, I'd quite like people to start having more of a conversation with their subs rather than having a go at them without any information.
Right. Any questions from the floor? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I should probably point out this is my first ASM. I'm very excited to be here, of course. I'm a big supporter of the Student Union. I'm not going to lie, I think you guys do work very hard for us. I don't think there's any denying that. However, I would like to go to what Aaron said quickly, which is the reason why I'm here. I'm generally not that interested in student democracy, to be honest. I think you do a fairly good job overall. But I would be interested to know just how much money was spent on the legal advice to find out whether changing the name of the president of the SU would be, legally dangerous for the university, especially when you found out that advice was later wrong. Do you have receipts for this? Who did you get your legal advice from? You're talking about all the things you are doing for the union, and obviously this has been a horrendous waste of money on this legal advice that you spent, and it just seems, generally pretty irresponsible to have done.
Ben, do you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. We said that we were worried about the risk of potential legal advice. We have lawyers who we use, all the time, and the initial conversation regarding this motion cost us a few £100. There was going to have to be another conversation. Now, we anticipated that was going to cost a few £1,000 to use, the lawyers that we use the whole time, who provide us fantastically sound financial and legal advice. So that's what it would have cost, but the motion wasn't resubmitted initially. It has now been resubmitted, but I would say that the threat that we were thinking was going to require legal advice was covered by the email that was got by Aaron and Carl. So we didn't re-pursue that.
Carl Moore.
My question's been answered.
Okay. Alex Shaw.
I'm just wondering how many trustees voted against the Game of Thrones motion proceeding to ASM?
Cosmo, Ben.
Well, it's, this motion was, after it was taken initially, was taken to ASM in order to, sorry, was taken to the Board of Trustees in order to get a steer. It was, this is obviously under closed business, so I'm not entirely sure if I can say specifically, but it was resounding. That's all I'm going to say. From when the trustees have seen this, and they looked at a number of different areas as to problems that were identified with this motion. So there was absolutely no room for doubt. Let me put it that way. When this was taken to the trustees in December.
Miguel.
Hey, just want to ask about some of the great things the union does. I feel we don't celebrate them enough. The question is to Kat, and it's to ask, can you just tell us some of the great things that the ENS team have done to stop sexual harassment in our venues, in our events? Yeah, cheers.
Cool, yeah, so there was a motion passed at, was it an Austrian meeting or a council? Either way, a motion was passed to ensure that there was a zero tolerance to sexual harassment in our venues. Our venue manager has really taken the lead on this and has really done us proud in ensuring that all training was delivered to members of ENT staff to ensure that a zero tolerance policy is now enforced in our union.
Joe Jones.
Hello. Yes, it's just wondering what legal advice was taken by the Students' Union stating that Bylaw 8, Appendix 2B, can be used to throw a motion to stop it from going to ASM, even though that Appendix 2B does not allow it to do such once it has passed composite committee. Sorry, that was weirdian.
Cosmo, that's more your turf.
Okay, we didn't seek legal advice on that. We didn't need to. The motion itself says it can be withdrawn from composite, and that's what happened. Composite took it, and we withdrew it.
Aaron Bywater.
Hi, thanks. Can I just ask why that vote is closed to us, and if we can ever see evidence, or when are we going to find out how many voted that way, and if we haven't found out, why haven't we found out?
Ben, do you want to take this?
And there's a number of things which the board would deem to be sensitive, and we don't publish closed things. There's a lot of stuff which the board publishes in confidence. That's the way you run a business. There's a number of things that are discussed at every board meeting. Say again? I'd be more than happy to, in the end, but this is still in process. And to be honest, I don't actually. Can I say? Okay. In that case, I think I can say it, and it was unanimous. The vote was unanimous by the Board of Trustees.
Tom Diamond.
Hey, I'm Tom. I want to ask a question to Ben, because he's the chair of the Board of Trustees. I went to the April meeting of the trustees, and I thought it was really interesting, but I went back and told everyone about it, and everyone thought it was a closed session. So I was just wondering what you've been doing to try and advertise the fact that people can go to these meetings and that important stuff does happen at them. Thanks.
Yeah, I would say that's probably a fair point. Perhaps there's not enough students who realise they can attend open business of the board. There were a number of students who asked me, if they could come along to this last one, and I feel I was fairly accommodating with that and making sure that everyone had a copy of the open agenda, and we made provision for people to be there. I'm not going to lie, it's not like it's something that I've gone out of my way to advertise. If that's something that people want us to do, then maybe that's something we need to look at and make sure that people are aware of that. We are more than happy for students to come along to open business. We're open to our members. All I would say, there obviously there are closed matters which a board does have to deal with. But there's the open agenda. More than welcome to come along.
Right, time for a few more questions. Priority goes just implicitly to ones covering new ground, I'd say. Tom Rayner.
Okay, can I quickly ask Cosmo on a point that's already been discussed? Sorry. This is on Appendix 2B again. Appendix 2B does say they have the power to overturn the decision of student council or an all-student meeting. It doesn't specify that it has the power to overturn a decision made by composite. Appendix 2A deals with decisions by composite, but it only gives the power to prevent something from proceeding to composite, not to overturn a decision by composite. Seeing as Appendix 2B doesn't specify that it has the power to overturn a decision by composite, do you stand by your decision to use that? And are there any other bylaws at all that would allow it to do so?
Firstly, it says it can withdraw it from steering or composite, so that doesn't just specify. That doesn't. I'm talking about 2A. It doesn't specify about before or after. What I would also say is, we have had a steer from. So the trustees had already given a steer before this meeting on the decision to take.
Mems and Arts 62, is that? Okay.
Look, can I just say, I understand that this is not great. No one's enjoying this. Okay, but look, we're in a system where the trustees are ultimately our highest governing body. This is not an easy decision that anybody's had to take, but the trustees are ultimately, like it or not, where the final buck stops for this organisation. They're responsible for making sure this organisation doesn't go bust. They're responsible for making sure that we can represent our students to the best of our ability. So that is why the buck stops with them. It's, I understand that this is really, I'm not enjoying this. This is not great. I understand. Students, we have democratic procedures, but these have all been approved by students. We have democratic procedures, but ultimately stuff has to go to the trustees.
Samuel Walker.
Hi, working? Yeah. I have a question for Ben. In your very good speech a couple of moments ago, you said you would like to give everyone a living wage. Given you want to do that, and given that some are paid more than 5 times the living wage, and many aren't, what would it take for you to be able to give everyone a living wage?
I don't have the stats off the top of my head, to be honest, but if we're talking a marginal, even the most marginal increase in what we're paying the lowest paid at the moment, even a marginal increase, you're looking at 5-figure sums, basically. We look to make a surplus of 50k a year. If we even just by making the smallest increase, obviously you've got to take that into account for every single year as a result of that. There are a number of competing demands. As I said, people want to cut prices. We want to have a living wage. There's increasing demand for support in IT. There's demand for support with societies and stuff as well. So well, we've been looking at this every year because we're mandated to by our policy, and each and every year we're trying to get closer towards it. But if we were to suddenly do it overnight, there's a number of stuff which we just wouldn't be able to do. There's only so much money about, so it would mean a cut to some of the membership services that we have, for example. So at the moment, we're really trying very hard to get towards it. We are discussing how we can do this in the long run. We're having a look at our 5-year plan that's coming up again, and we're going to get increasingly towards this. So we're not trying to get there gradually. We are making a fundamental push to try and increase and to get there quickly.
All right, I've got some names down here. Those are the only questions I'm going to take, and then we're going to move on to the motion. Aaron, your name is down on the list. Matt Davies.
I've got a question slightly moving away from something different. This isn't particularly target any SAB, so any SAB can feel free to answer it. But I'm on student council due to 8 people in the room putting their hand up. A lot of people who were elected to student council, either last summer, in the autumn elections, or through other means, don't turn up and nothing seems to be done about it. In student council, about 3 people seem to do about 90% of the talking. Can we say student council really functions if this is all the case? Like, is it even worth it if? And I'm really wondering what sabbatical officers would say, probably from their experience, really needs to change about student council to make it work and to make sure people who actually do turn up to student council, more people contribute and actually serves a function instead of just being sort of a voice box for those who want to talk a lot.
Sorry, as chair of council, I'll just pick up a few of them, and then I don't know whether anyone else see what I say. So as for people not turning up, it's been a problem this year, and in hindsight, it should have been a lot tougher. I think I was probably a bit too sympathetic, I think, to people. Lessons learned, and I'm glad that next year I'll be able to take a much firmer hand. Also, it's written very clearly, but it's more difficult than it seems just to take disciplinary action and fire people from their posts. So I'd like to actually look at that over the summer and try and think of a kind of more foolproof way to do that. 90% of the talking, I'm not sure. Short of telling people who talk a lot in council not to stop talking, I'm not which would run the risk of, you don't want to seem like you're implicitly censoring people. I don't know whether that's the right tack. But again, council always needs improving, and I'm going to personally, in the run-up for Democracy and Development Officer, look over it over summer.
Can I just add, as someone who spent 2 years on council as a part-time faculty rep, a year on council as the chair of council, and this year on council, I have noticed over the last 4 years we've become more and more bogged down in the minutiae of the bylaws, and I feel that sometimes that doesn't make it accessible to necessarily everybody that wants to come to student council, which is a shame, because I remember the first year that I went and we actually talked about real things rather than bylaw, something, point something, part A.
Lucy.
Yeah, cool. I'd like to chip in too. I mean, Matt, you mentioned about the fact that you were elected by 8 people in a room. I remember I was there. I think 8's very optimistic. And we understand that there's a lot of work to do on things like postgraduate representation, and I know Andrew wants to work on that next year. I also think, I've only been on council a year, and to be honest, do I blame people for not participating? Sometimes no. The atmosphere in that room is not constructive. It's based on party politics, it's based on personality politics, it's based on power plays. And that doesn't make for a conducive environment where we can discuss things properly. And I think all of us, every one of us, like SABs and non-SABs, need to take a step back and think about why that happens. No wonder we have few women there, no wonder we have few BME members, no wonder we have few disabled students participating in student council. It's not a nice place to be. And the second point I'd like to make is we do get bogged down in bylaws, but at the same time, the key point of council is to hold us accountable. And I cannot think of any one member of council asking me a question this year. I've not been held accountable because I'm the postgraduate officer and therefore I deal only with postgraduate issues. I think Parliament, of course we're not. We're doing the best we can in a little space. But either one, we take a step up and we do it properly, or 2, we work out what council is. It's flawed, and we need to stop. We need to stop these power plays. We need to stop personality politics because no one else will get involved. And before we sort that out, we can't do anything worthwhile. So.
Anne, do you want to? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think Lucy touched on both of the points that I was going to say. But just like advice for council for next year, what I'd love is like other SABs. We've almost completed like most of the stuff we've done, I hope. And I'd love it for next year for like council members if like you look at our officer objectives and instead of saying, why haven't you done X, you say like, Ant, Isaac, you must be strapped for time. Like, what can I do to help you? I'm a council member. I'm a student representative. I'm, an agent of change in this university. It's not just you 7 guys. Like, what can I do to help you out? Because I'm here, I share responsibility. Like, I have stuff to do too. So yeah.
I think you make a really important point, Matt, especially about you being elected by 8 people. It was definitely, I would say with Lucy, it definitely was less than 8. The tricky thing is over the last 2 years we've been implementing the results of a democracy review, and it's not like that was thought up by just by some crackpot. Chris Luck. No, he's a great guy. He's a great guy, and he spent ages consulting with loads and loads of students, and it went through council. It went through loads and loads of different mediums, really. And this is what students asked for. So we tried to do something, and there are definitely areas where we'd look at it on reflection and say maybe that hasn't worked out in the way that that we wanted it to. So I'd be open to the fact that there's probably some stuff that we need to change. But if you look at the Postgrad Association, which you were elected to, the reason that's there is because we felt that postgrads were underrepresented, and they wanted to have an association. They wanted to have a voice who they could elect on an ad hoc basis. That happened. No one's shown up. We tried hard with publicity, so we've done our bit on one sense. But I think on the other hand, we probably need to look at how we've gone about that. Maybe we could have done things differently too. It's all a learning curve, and I really hope we can get that right going into next year.
Okay, Miguel.
Hiya. Yeah, this question is for Zoe, and it's about the Warwick Sport Review. It's just asking how much of the considerable increase that's been agreed, is it going to be done in 1 year or several years, and what benefits is it going to accrue to the members of Warwick Sport? Cheers.
Okay, thank you for your question. So the increase in the fee will be implemented in the first year. We took this decision actually through consultation with the students. We consulted with execs from sports clubs and sports committee as well. So the main fee is the sports federation fee, and we were going to increase it over 3 years up to the full amount. But students said actually that it looks like it's never going to stop going up, and how are you going to sort of justify the increase each year? So we decided to put it up in the first year, but there's lots of benefits through the review. The first one being the club development programme. So we're employing a brand new member of staff, the club development officer, and we'll have the most resource we've ever had for sports clubs. And with that is a pot of money for sports clubs to bid into, also something called a Kite Mark programme, which we're sort of writing the criteria for at the moment, which will be a reward system to sort of promote good practice among clubs and reward them for doing good things. So it'll be sort of a tiered system, bronze, silver, gold, and sort of set criteria you have to get for each one. And as you get higher up, you get more money to support your development for the next year. So it's kind of to incentivise each club to sort of strive for doing new things, taking on new projects, catering for more diverse membership, all sorts of things like that. And with that comes all sorts of different benefits, not just cash, but also preferential training times, things like that. So yeah, that's the main benefit of the club development programme, which I'm really excited about. Should be really good improvement for next year. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, fantastic.
The increase is £33.
Great. Stu Shevlin.
Hello, everyone. I think you made a really good point before about the politicisation of student council and, of the people that generally get involved. I shouldn't be able to look around the room and be able to tell you here which party everyone's in, because I know
Is this a question?
Yeah, I'm getting on to it. But I just wanted to go back to what you said about holding people accountable. Ben, you gave me an answer before regarding how much the legal advice costs regarding the motion for changing the name of the president. I just want to know, are you going to be issuing those receipts? Are you going to be making it public? Are you going to be doing anything? Because just saying a few hundred, a few thousand, it's too vague. Are you going to be publishing those receipts?
Quick answer if you can, Ben.
Yeah, sure. Perhaps you misunderstood what I said. I'm happy to publish the receipt or whatever it was of the initial cost. Like I said, it was a couple of hundred. But we anticipated there was going to be a legal cost of a few thousand as a result of the motion, which then wasn't taken forward. We therefore didn't get legal advice after that. When the motion was resubmitted, that concern was no longer there because there was a letter from HBO saying that there wouldn't be any concerns with copyright. That's what we would have taken the legal advice for.
Right. Penultimately, Tom Rayner.
Hi, this is a question to Lucy. Sorry, I've got you at a bad moment now. This is a question over the strikes. So I think we're quite happy to say that there isn't going to be a marking boycott now, and that's obviously quite a big relief to third-year students. But it's the fact that UCU now considers this issue resolved, whereas for a lot of people involved, this was actually an issue over postgraduate pay conditions, which was never in any of the UCU press releases. It was never in any of the UCU documentation about the strikes, and obviously now that they consider the issue resolved, it obviously isn't a main priority to UCU. It's therefore the fact that, do you believe that your blog that talked about postgraduate issues, although a real concern and something that as an SU we need to be pushing forward, was in fact slightly inaccurate when it linked the strike action to postgraduate issues?
I would certainly argue that it's not a priority for UCU going forward because they've just recently issued with the NUS a postgraduate employment charter laying out everything they want for postgraduate teachers from universities. So it's still very high on their agenda. In fact, I'm meeting with them on Wednesday with the hourly paid lectures group that they run here at Warwick, working with one of the early career researchers and full-time lecturers who've been lobbying the university frequently over pay and conditions this year. So it's actually very much on their agenda here at Warwick. They very much participated in the strike, but our support of the strike before the marking boycott very much not only rested on postgraduates who teach, but actually rested on the wider issue of fair pay in higher education, which, although 2% has put a plaster on, personally I don't think is solved. Because we always believe that fair paid staff, whether they're postgraduates or full-time members of staff, are the only ones that can fully deliver the education that you deserve. Like, if you're not paid to mark, how do you give good feedback? If you're not paid to hold an office hour, how do you talk to a student about their concern? So, yeah, I think it was part of the strike. I think it is still a priority for the UCU going forward, and I think that as a union we should always support fair pay in higher education.
And finally going to Aaron Bowater.
Hi. Ben, you mentioned that the trustees act as a last resort, as the final point. I completely agree. So is it not simply the case then that they were brought in earlier because you guys were so worried that the motion being out in the public domain would have made it nigh on impossible for you to throw it out after an ASM or a referendum, if indeed it had even passed a referendum?
Quick answer, I feel like we're covered.
No, absolutely not. When it was submitted the first time, that decision has to be scrutinised by the Board of Trustees. So we informed the trustees that Composite at that point had rejected it. We were completely open and honest about everything. That decision was scrutinised by the trustees. After that, as chair of the board, I responded to a question that was given and say that how could I act in a way to speak on behalf of the trustees without knowing what they would say. As a result of that, I asked the trustees for a steer in case the motion was to be resubmitted. The trustees then said that if the motion was to be resubmitted, that they would not pass it. And there were a number of grounds for that. When the motion was resubmitted, therefore I don't, and in accordance with the bylaws, it can be taken out at any point by the trustees. I don't think it's any more democratic to allow students to have a phony vote if we know that it's going to be withdrawn by the trustees afterwards.
Okay, moving on to the sole motion we've got tonight, which is increasing the accountability of Warwick students to its members. Tom Rayner.
I'm going to try and keep this very, very, very brief because it would be nice if we could have dinner and everything. The two very simple points. It's about the importance of increasing accountability within a students' union because it's a member-led organisation. The fact that this is our students' union is made up of all its members, and it's important that we understand what it's doing, why it's doing it, and how it's doing it. That's the importance of transparency and accountability. It doesn't mean that we assume they're doing something wrong, that they're fiddling expenses, that they're blowing our money on anything. It just purely means that we have the tools at our disposal to be able to make sure we can properly hold our officers to account, the decisions the student union makes to account. I know some people have expressed some concerns with this motion, One of the big concerns they've expressed is over the publication of staff salaries. What this motion does not do is it does not name any one individual and give their salaries. It provides a numerical value of all those that are paid between 20 and 25,000, between 25 and 30,000, but it's not naming any individual. It is not allowing them to easily be identified. It's about moving lots of things that are currently on the L drive, which is very inaccessible to a lot of students, over onto the main website where it can be found, so people can actually see the bylaws, they can see the appendices, they can see the governing documents that actually rule how the SU works, so that we can make sure that we understand the process and therefore we can help hold officers to account. It shows the sort of things that can be claimed on expenses in the total expenses bill, so that we know that our money is being used wisely. Again, that is not a implicit suggestion that they're using our money for bad purposes. It's just purely making it easier for us to be able to see how they're spending our money. It's more a vote of confidence in our students' union. It's about saying we recognise all the good work that it does, but we want to be in a position where we continue to hold it to account because it's our students' union, so we need to vote that we can ensure that we continue to control it. Thank you.
Anyone against? Kat?
Hi. Given the conversations we've already had today, you'll appreciate I'm a little bit nervous to speak against this motion. And I think there are some really, really interesting points that you've raised and a couple of really good ideas that have been suggested. However, when I ran to be an officer, I ran because I wanted to improve the experience of many students as possible. With this in mind, I want to ask the proposers of this motion, who is this benefiting? We're not a big organisation. In fact, we're actually really small. But we are ones which work hard to fulfil a mission of improving the student experience. And I'm worried that some things proposed in this motion will either detract away from helping other students or actively make things worse. For example, one of my particular concerns, which Tom, you've already raised, is about publishing staff salaries. I don't know if any of you have worked for an organisation before, but salaries are really personal. Although this motion might seem to ensure that this information will be presented confidentially, as Tom, you said, because the organisation is so small, it will be incredibly easy to identify who earns what. Pay slips are confidential for a reason, and I think that would cause unnecessary tension to the atmosphere at the union. Why does that matter? Because staff work so hard for students. They help you get the most out of your clubs and societies, to improve your representation to the university, to make sure you have a space to feel you can relax and enjoy your time on campus. Quite frankly, members of this union have helped save people's lives, and if you think I'm being hyperbolic, you underestimate the work of the Advice Centre. I don't understand why we would vote for something which could potentially ruin morale amongst staff and detract away from what really should be the focus here, the students. Students have told us through the Help Us Help You survey that they care about their degrees, money pressures, and holding the university to account. No one mentioned that they're worried about how much money union staff are being paid or how much a train fare costs to get to a conference. So why not let us get on with what really matters, which is what as far as I'm concerned, is doing the best job for you. Don't vote for something which draws away from the resources which help us to do that. Thanks.
Okay, second in favour, Francis Lassock. Sorry, I probably said that wrong.
Oh, you're fine. Please forgive me any failures in public speaking. I'm not exactly a student politician. First of all, I want to thank Kat for that, because I think essentially the problem is that we are talking at cross purposes. It's pretty much what Ben said, that what you do is great, but the thing is the students don't know about it. The students don't understand. And the point of this motion is essentially to have the students be able to find out, have you tell us. The point about the staff, there are 68 full-time staff. This isn't going to come down on any one person. And in any case, the resolve can only be implemented subject to successful negotiations with formal staff and trade union representatives. So again, at this stage, it's an ambition that's going to be subject to agreement. It's not an attempt by students to regulate on the staff. And it sort of forgets all the other points of the motion, I think, just to focus on that one. The stuff about the L drive and the students' union bylaws, that's all admin things. That's something that should have happened before. And it's a sad point that people don't understand what the student union does. They feel that the students' union is different to them. They're wrong. But if things like the L drive were fixed, then I genuinely think that it would help the student body to appreciate you more. I mean, we want to know why there's difficulty with wages, why there's difficulty with cheap drinks. We're not in opposition to you. This is basically an attempt to get the students to understand what the SABs are doing, and I can't see why an accountability motion should be a scary thing for the SABs, and I think on the whole it generally isn't.
Second against, Lucy.
I don't think it's a scary thing for the SABs, and if there are, as Kat said, many points here that I agree with, I just want to pick up on two really. One is the resource implication of doing some of these things, we have choices to make. We do one thing or we do another. There's not endless time. And do I believe that the majority of students would like to examine the intricacies of the bylaws? Probably not. Do I believe the majority of students would like us to run activities and do all that? Yes. Do I think we should work towards it? Absolutely. The second point is drawing on what Kat said about staff. I've worked as a students' union as a sort of sabbatical member of staff. I've worked on projects, I've worked on reception. Students' union staff don't get paid a lot. It would be very easy to work out who got paid £25,000 to £30,000. It would be very easy to work out who got paid £30,000 to £35,000. There aren't that many people that get paid a lot of money at the students' union. And I think to devalue the work that staff do to little more than a number in a band is disappointing. They do so much more than that. They're not just a sort of Band B member. They put hours of work in. Members of the Advice Centre go and help students with their disciplinaries after hours. We have members of staff that work in the venues that support students who are having a rough time on a night out. We have members of staff that support students to represent themselves. We have members of staff that help people go on trips and tours, that spend hours looking after people in emergencies. And if I could vote on this motion in parts, I would, and I would vote yes to most of them. I really would. Most of this is great. But as it stands, I think it devalues what they do. And I couldn't have done a thing I've done this year without members of staff. And anything that devalues their contribution, I just can't support.
Okay, points from the floor. I'm going to limit contributions to about a minute. So we go first to Aidan Hocking.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to oppose even the parts of this motion with stuff like the L drive and the Nussel stuff on the basis that, having been on Union Council for 2 years, I've talked to lots of students about lots of things. I've helped people who run a charity try and get their money sent through to Argentina when there were some bureaucratic issues stopping them. I've talked to people on different courses about the cost of their year abroad. I've talked to people about the prices of products in the SU and the ethical nature of those products. I've talked about microwaves on campus. I've talked about Hurst being knocked down, the potential impacts of that. I've talked about the amount of contact hours different degrees get. No one has ever asked me to address any of the things in this motion. No one's ever asked me how much train tickets cost to get to, I don't know, Liverpool or Sheffield or wherever, NUS conference is being held. So I just think it's a waste of our staff time. We don't have many staff, as people have been saying. And if our SABs are doing this, they're not, making sure that Hurst gets knocked down in the summer rather than in the middle of exams. It's not that I necessarily think all these things are bad things on an intellectual level. I've just never met a student who's not already involved in SU politics who cares.
John LePage.
I think we should vote against this on basis of results 4 and 5 for the reasons that the speech against said. But I think we should turn to next year's SAB and say a lot of the other ideas here are good. I again have been on council and I have had people ask me, what do the rules say about this, what do the rules say about this. That's where actually the costumes motion came from. That's where the motion which is changing whether people can vote for other faculties came from. Because people come and ask, what does the union position on this? And sometimes the answer in the bylaws, there is no reason why our regulations are not accessible on the main website. The bylaws are. And also there's no reason why council passed 2 years ago isn't available anywhere, the minutes, when council's supposed to be reviewing policy that was passed at those meetings. And I've asked 2 questions about that in council. We do need to have all our transparency better. I don't think this motion should go through though.
Jack McCann.
Hi, can I ask Cosmo what he's going to personally do to ensure that students actually know about this ASM motion and trying to increase voter turnout? And could he put an estimation on what percentage turnout might be?
This would have been better in questions. Do you want to very, very briefly? I'd rather crack on.
Say again, sorry? Yeah, in terms of branding for this ASM, I've actually insisted on having a rebrand so that this ASM stands out more. Mainly because I knew that the number of motions would be low and it'd be quite hard to get turnout in term 3. I don't know if you're implying that I've deliberately tried to not promote this because I don't like the motion. I'm meant to be... The vote online, to me, that's the same thing in terms of promoting the ASM, promoting the vote. And I'll be doing everything in my power to make sure as many people as possible vote. That's what I do. That's my job.
Matt Davies.
Yeah, one of the points made in the 4 speeches was it will help people understand what their SU does, and I'm not sure how seeing wage brackets will help people understand what their SU does. I think helping them understand what the SU does is more a job of the SU sabbatical officers and the SU itself actually telling people more actively what they do rather than just looking at wage bills and minutes and expenses claims. I think even people involved in student politics, i.e. me, could possibly care less about. I think it's only going to be like 6 people who ever read these ever. So I generally think the majority of students could not care about anything in this motion. So,
Tom Diamond.
Hello. As a non-student councillor who's never been to council before, I think that I've got something to say. So, Aidan, there's one person who does actually care. This is very echoey. Okay, so what I want to say is that I think this is a bit of a smokescreen at the moment, because I went to student council last time and I was a bit ashamed of what some of you were saying. I felt like it was undemocratic, unaccountable, and when I went back and found out I couldn't access any of the minutes from the main website after spending half an hour looking, I felt like you didn't represent me at all. And when I was being called things like an ordinary student, it sets up a sort of class thing for which all you Labour people talk about all the time. You say that that you represent us, you want us to know what you do lots of great things, but then you ask questions about North Korea in student council meetings. And I mentioned these to quite a few other people, and they were quite pissed off as well, because we think that you should be having a serious talk on these issues, rather than just wasting your time in party politics.
Miguel?
Okay, let's face it, most students don't care about what happens inside student council. Most students just want to go to the bread oven and have a baguette, go to the duck, have a nice time, go to pop, all those different things. But the question is, when they do ask, why am I paying so much for Socks Fed? When they do ask, why am I paying so much for Sports Federation? When they do ask, what is the point of voting? Why am I electing these people and what are they doing? When they do ask these things, we need to be able to provide answers. Now, I'm not saying that a majority of students does ask this, but we need to be able to provide them with information when they do and be able to satisfy their concerns. Now, some of the points in this motion I completely disagree with. The thing about pay and being transparent about pay, I'm not sure will help democracy or transparency. I'm not sure showing how much each society gets will help that either, because it'll just lead to petty rivalries between societies. But what I do agree with is that the L drive should be in the democracy part of the website. We should be filming and comprehensively minuting the meetings of student council, the open parts of trustees, not because the majority of students will go and rush to see these things, but because when this question arises, we need to be able to provide an answer, and we should. It's our duty as a member-led organisation. Cheers.
Francis.
Just to pick up on a couple of points about the L drive. Yeah, it is an insult to democracy. The SU is a democratic union, it prizes democracy, and it's an insult to that when the regulations of the SU are just so damn difficult to find. And it is something that makes ordinary students scared of student politics because the entire thing is so damn obscure. And even if it's just a symbol, it's not something that's going to take out a great amount of staff time to have a link to one part of the SU website, but obviously on the SU website under the tab Democracy. It's not going to be that difficult. Just to pick up again on Matt's point, again, I disagree. Students do care. They don't care about the minutiae of student politics, but they want to know why. They want to know about the wage. They want to know why a pint in the duck costs so much. They want to know where their socks fed money goes. And I think of course people care. And again, if people ask, then we should be able to answer them. And again, I hate to play the ordinary student card, but I find it very, very difficult to understand why this is so controversial.
Thomas Rayner.
This is to specifically respond to John from slightly earlier about points 4 and 5. So points 4 is not going to say how much someone claimed on a train ticket or anything. There was an earlier form of this motion which would have done that. This deliberately took that out because it was considered that was petty and unnecessary. What this motion does is it lists the things that can be claimed back, not the amounts of the individual claims, which obviously makes the expenses process easier. It then also says a total bill for the amount of expenses claimed as well. That's not by an individual, but that's the overall entire bill for expenses for the entire SU over that year. Again, point 5, this isn't supposed to make staff feel uncomfortable. We were working with the SU on this, so one of the suggestions was maybe it should be £10,000. HR said they were okay with it being £5,000 brackets. And again, I really must stress this final line, subject to successful negotiations with formal staff and trade union representatives on the matter. This obviously cannot force this through unless it has that successful negotiation. It is subject to that, and therefore a concern that that might not pass is not a grounds to oppose this motion.
Kat, Søren.
I think Matt made a really good point earlier about council and how council isn't really working. And I think that's something that we can't ignore. And this was the first time today that someone has asked me a question about what I've done. And I think actually that says a lot. You should be holding your officers to account, not members of staff. You should be finding out what we've been doing. Like, we've done loads of really great stuff this year, and I think that is where that's where the flaw is. We need to be held to account, not members of staff.
John LePage.
Just to respond to Tom just a moment ago, I can appreciate that that's your intention for point 4, but the wording is any claims that were unsuccessful must be published online. And regardless of your intention, if that's worded that way, it'll be misread, and therefore we should still reject it, because we can't change it. If it had been brought through council, we could have discussed this and amended it, and it could have still gone through with the parts that people want to vote for. But, I mean, that's one of the other benefits of council, is you can bring a motion just like to this, except we can actually make amendments and have discussion that changes something, rather than having to reject a motion, or asking people to reject a motion, or voting on rejecting a motion based on one point that we don't like, when all the other ideas are really good.
Aidan Harking.
Yeah, just to go back to the issue of council always dealing with really minute issues, this is such an issue. You know, I've been on council this year, and the big issues that affect students are just not discussed. We discuss, how the chair of council is elected. We discuss, questions about, expenses in NUS. No one, again, I know I'm repeating myself a bit, but no one has ever asked me about these things. And I, do talk to a lot of people as a councillor, because that's my job. I ask them what's going on. So I just don't see what purpose this serves, except to, it's not that I necessarily think it's all bad. It's just a waste of time. I don't want Cosmo to be spending months of his time writing reports about Nussel. It's not a useful. When people talk about what Cosmo does to me, they want to know how much a pint is. They don't want to know how much of that is because of the NUS's consortium. It's just not relevant. This is a stupid motion.
Joe Jones.
This is more to pick up on a point that's been made several times. I'm not a member of student council. I'm a first-year student. But I have actually been asked a lot of times what the hell goes on in student council. People do want to know. I've actually had, because they know I turn up to these things, they know I'm sad and I'm into politics. So they turn to me and they say, do you know what actually goes on? And to stand there and say, honestly, I can't point you to an area where you can find that out, that makes me feel a little bit upset. I love RSU, and I think it should do more. I think the fact that we should get out there a bit and actually say this is what we achieve, actually put up the minutes, then you can actually have students saying, where can I find this? There it is, there you go.
Lucy.
Cool. I think we've all got that students want to know. My point would be, if I wanted to know something, I wouldn't hunt out the minutes to a meeting held in January. I'd probably ask Cosmo, or I'd go and ask my rep, or I'd go and ask Aidan, seeing he's a very active member of council. I'm not going to hunt through a bylaw, and I think what would actually make us more accountable is exactly what Kat said. It would be students asking us questions. It would be people coming and saying, you're the postgraduate officer, but actually you were elected by everyone. What have you done for me? Or someone going, Cosmo, what time is the pub open? Or Kat, when's the next gum clinic? Or why do you have 3 and not 4? Or all these questions that you could just come and ask us. Or you could put a question on Facebook, or send us a tweet, or send me an email. Or ask one of your councillors who are just as accountable as we are. Every member of council is accountable like we are. That's where the flaw is. The flaw is in what student council is and how we can feed back. The flaw is not in whether bylaw 2.3.5 is, although it is on the website, whether it is accessible. Like, you can come and talk to us. People can talk to us. Like, we're here. We have office hours. Just ask someone a question. I don't know.
Right, I've got 2 names down here to speak. I'd just like to go to them unless anyone else has like a really desperately original point to make. John LePage.
Sorry, last one. The reason why council doesn't really discuss big student issues is because the students decided to stop them from discussing big student issues by removing their right to do policy, and I completely agree with that decision to make all policies go through these meetings. But that's why most big student issues aren't discussed, because I was on council before that change and we discussed the minutiae alongside big policies. Students decided that they weren't happy with those big decisions being made in what they perceived as not a closed session, but an inaccessible session. I completely agree with this, but it's then weird to sort of come back and say, well, then council's not doing anything at all. You know, I've already proposed, I proposed on my blog, which nobody reads, is on the student website, about how we could like change the council and get rid of it effectively. And, you know, I do agree, get rid of this motion, but please do some of the things on it, Rob. You know, like the L drive, you know, it's really wrong to say, oh, nobody cares about this, therefore it's fine for us to just put it somewhere where we can't see these things, when the regulations do govern people's societies and how people go around through getting the union services. And, yeah.
Miguel.
Yeah. So I'm not going to discuss sort of the parts about salaries and all of that, because I feel like I've already said I've opposed this, and I feel like many here do already oppose, and I think that's pretty clear. I think about the information, I think there's sort of a point to be made. And John just said it should be available. Some of it is, bylaws are available, some of it isn't. Really, it's about how accessible that information is, how easy it is for each and all of us to access it. Now, Lucy made a great point. Obviously, we could all go to sabbatical offices, and I, many times a week, go to sabbatical offices to ask them about things and, you know, try and have a healthy relationship with all of them. But ultimately, the question is, would ordinary students climb up those 2 flights of stairs and go into a sabbatical officer's office? And the answer is most of the time they wouldn't. And really, it's our burden as representatives to try and make information as accessible and make it as easy as possible for students to access and participate in our democracy. Now, I'd just like to finish off by saying, you know, I'm sure that Rob will make sure that some of these things are implemented next year, whether we pass this policy or not. I hope that people who did campaign for this will take on board some of the criticism made here, and they will reintroduce this next year, perhaps without the staff salaries and the expenses, because some of the stuff here is really good and we need to make sure it happens. But some of the stuff still needs to be worked on. Cheers.
Tom Diamond, you want to speak? Do you feel this is a new point? All right, go for it.
Hello? I just wanted to say that if you want to take this back to student council to vote for it, I don't honestly think that I can trust you to come out with an honest decision and say, yeah, we're happy to publish all the stuff we've previously kept away from you. Like, I don't see why this should be a decision for student council to make when, after some of the things which you've said previously, which I think are quite undemocratic anyway. Also, can you stop talking about me and Jack and whoever it was as ordinary students? Student council isn't an aristocracy. You're ordinary students too, so just because I don't go to student council doesn't mean that I'm somehow ordinary and you're exceptional. Thanks.
Okay, summing up speeches. Tom.
Yeah, again, thank you for all the concerns that have been reached. Again, John, to go back to point 4, this is a bit about the publication of unsuccessful claims. I'm not aware that there have actually ever been any unsuccessful claims. So again, this is only in case of what are considered illegitimate claims. People should have a right to see what people were trying to get away with claiming. And more about publishing a list isn't about the minutiae, such as how much did they claim on a train fare from Leamington to Birmingham to go to a conference. It's about the fact that the list of items that are acceptable to claim for. Again, point 5, I know a lot of time is spent talking about staff salaries. This isn't trying to name them. There were 68 full-time staff. There are many, many more staff of the Students' Union. It's not trying to name the people that work on a reception desk. It's not trying to give the salaries of people that work in Curiosity for a few hours a week or in the bread oven. This is about those staff that are paid more than £20,000, of which there are 68 full-time equivalent members of staff employed by the Students' Union. They obviously take up a large amount of the budget of the Students' Union, and this is a budget which is used to help student services. It's important that we understand where this money is going on, where these staff are. Are they all staff that are paid above £50,000, which I don't believe that is the case, or are they staff which are on the lower end of the spectrum, which I believe they are? It's about being able to understand where this money is going on and actually saying, well, no, it's not about 10 staff that get paid £50,000 a year. It's the fact that actually the majority of staff are getting a very average salary but doing an amazing job for it. It's about allowing you to be more accountable, being able to understand more about what your union is, and that means you can be prouder of it. Again, Aidan makes an interesting point. Nobody's come and asked him. Well, there are 23,000 students, so I hope for his sake that not all 23,000 students are coming to him on a daily basis asking about union business. Otherwise, I dread to think this is happening to his degree. This is about accepting that there are a lot of students that feel absolutely disengaged with the process, that they don't want to come into SUHQ, they don't want to speak to officers, they don't want to speak to their student councils because they don't really feel comfortable doing that. However, sat at the comfort of their room, they might like to explore a little bit about what the union is doing, particularly when it's relevant to what they're doing. So people submit motions. People like to understand the process for that motion, and part of that is understanding what these Appendix 2A and 2B is. A lot of people in this room will never have heard of them
Try and draw it
before.
to a close if you can.
Okay, I'm rapidly bringing it to close. Not many people have heard of Appendix 2A and 2B, and if they were interested in going to look at it, that would be a very difficult process, unless they happen to have been let into this big secret of the L drive, which seems to be very closely guarded. This is about increasing accountability. This is not saying the SU is at fault. This is about saying a students' union is a member-led organisation, a member-run organisation, and it works more effectively when members feel part of that process.
Kat.
I completely understand and appreciate the sentiment in which this motion was written. However, I think in its current form, it doesn't really actually achieve what the proposers of this motion were trying to achieve. And I think that, unfortunately, because of the way things are bracketed, I think you would still be able to tell which members of staff were earning what. 68 really isn't that very many members of staff. It's a very small community. Everybody knows everybody. And I think it would be damaging. And that's why I don't think that this motion should go through.
Francis?
Just to wrap up, I think the meaning of our argument, it's more than anything else, it's a visibility thing, where the students do, a lot of them, feel different to the SU. They feel the SU is arcane, they feel the SU processes are hidden, and it's really, really, really damn difficult to justify why all the SU regulations are essentially hidden on the L drive. So all this motion is about letting the students feel that the SU is accessible. The staff are part of the union and they're working for it like the SABs. We're not out to get anyone. And the way it works is that throughout this discussion, it's felt like that there are sort of student politics on one side and then the rest of the students on the other, the SAB on one side, the students on the other. And essentially all this motion is trying to stop that and don't have the entire SU democracy make it look like a secret, make it look like what it is, which is something that's relevant to all of us, and pass this motion.
Lucy.
Cool. I just want to say I think we already have the bylaws up there, we already have the policy up there, and I think maybe I was too strong. The minutes could go up there, that's fine if people want to read them. I just think the majority's already there. It would take time to do things like the reports for Nussel. I'd rather spend the time on other things, but again, I come back to the 2 points. I don't think this is the best way to make us accountable. I think that sits in solving student council. I think it sits with reporting back better what we do, but I don't think that comes in the form of minutes. And I also think I come back to point 5 about the staff. As Tom said repeatedly, maybe there isn't such a thing as an ordinary student, and all students have different priorities. And I've heard it personally said that someone said to me, well, why do I pay for the advice centre because I don't use it? And I just worry, when you have that up, you can identify what money goes into services like the advice centre, and people might employ that to argue against those services. Those services are crucial. As Kat said before, things like that save lives. Like, academic representation helps postgraduates who don't really have a voice elsewhere in the union. I don't want to get to a point where we prioritise services against this band system, and that's why I'm opposing this. I think some of it great, some of it Rob should take on, But for me, it just treads a dangerous line.
Okay, we're going to have a little indicative vote just in this room. Remember, if anyone has made it this far into the video, we're talking to you guys at home watching this, so you're the ones that decide. But within this room, we are going to have a little vote. So everyone in favour of passing this motion, increasing accountability, please raise your cards. Okay, everyone against? Abstentions? Okay, there was slightly more against, but it was very, very close. So it'll be interested to see how this one pans out in the student body. This has been the last democratic meeting this year. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all the sabbatical officers, because I know everyone in this room, owe a lot of their student experience to the SU, and so I think everyone's grateful in whatever shape or form for the people that have taken the responsibility to spend their time running the Students' Union. Thanks to everyone who turned up, because it's enthusiastic people like you that keep the SU ticking over, I think. And I've really enjoyed being Chair of Council this year, and I'm going to be quite sad to leave it behind. But anyway, thank you so much, guys, and hope you have good luck in exams.